hold music. You want to avoid it, and so do your customers. So say goodbye to hold music and hello to faster, smarter support with Salesforce. Make service more personal and agents more productive using built-in trusted AI. Then watch costs and wait times drop and satisfaction soar. Support customers in a whole new way with Service GPT. Learn how at salesforce.com/servicegpt.
Welcome to Nature-Backed podcast of Single Earth. In this podcast series, we are talking with investors about their vision of the new green world. My name is Tarmo Virki, and in this episode I'm talking with Alexis Caporale from World Fund. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Hey there, I'm Merit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Single Earth, and we are building a nature-backed currency to empower you to fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. Sign up at Single.Earth and be among the first to switch to a truly sustainable, nature-based economy. And don't forget to join the discussion around climate change and biodiversity loss on our Discord channel. Enjoy the show.
Thanks, Alex, for joining us at Nature-Backed.
No, thank you. Thank you, Tamo, for the invitation.
Tell us a few words about the World Fund. What do you guys do? I mean, it could be easily by name be confused to, I don't know, Worldwide Fund or any of the other kind of funding agencies, but in a way it's a VC, right?
It is absolutely a VC in every sense of the word. We are 350 million euros climate-focused VC. So we invest in solutions that can have a relevant, meaningful impact on climate change mitigation.
How did the World Fund was founded? What was the beginning?
Yes, of course. The World Fund has a very nice founding story because, in a way, it has a lot to do with Ecosia. Ecosia is an independent search engine based in Berlin that has already 12 years old. And it was born with a very beautiful idea, which is basically do a search engine that with its profit just plants trees. That was the founding idea. And 12 years later, Ecosia has planted, I think it's already 150 million trees in the most relevant areas of the world in terms of climate change mitigation, but also in terms of community impact. So Ecosia was in a way where everything started, where everything went together for the World Fund, because Tim Schumacher is one of the general partners. He's the co-founder of Ecosia, and was also a friend of Daniel Visevich from childhood, and Daniel was also helping out in Ecosia. And Tim met Daria from basically because they shared a board of one of the companies, and Ecosia started having inbound deals, which was infrequent, I would say, for Ecosia. And so they realized that what they had there was an opportunity because there was a gap for companies that were doing something relevant for climate change mitigation, but also were building great businesses and didn't know where really to go for funding. That's what they realized, and that's how the idea started growing. And 3 years later, maybe I can say, we are all here investing and doing well.
How many investments today in the portfolio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have announced 7 investments so far. Hopefully, a couple more to be announced soon. And we're active. We're seeing lots of exceptionally good deal flow, I would say. Maybe the complex thing right now is the macro market condition, and I guess nobody knows exactly how this is going to play out, but the quality of what the founders are building it's impressive. Like, I can just say that it's impressive.
It's probably one of the interesting topics also to the listeners, how the macroeconomy, how, I don't know, the May crypto crash, which has spilled over to everything really, how it is kind of playing out for the VCs, I don't know, investment decisions and all the logic on that side. How do you guys see the situation at the moment?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, our focus, our filtering when we go for investments, it's pretty long term, because we aim to invest in solutions that have the potential to mitigate at least 100 megatons of CO2 per year, which is pretty substantial, right? So we basically believe that over the next couple of decades, those companies that have a larger contribution to a regenerative world will be also the ones who are going to have a better financial performance. So from that perspective, every company we are investing into has necessarily a long-term vision. So we're lucky, and at the moment our portfolio is not really affected by the crypto crash, and so of course interest rates are like there's macro characteristics that affect everyone in every industry, but really we're safely in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think many climate change mitigation company strategies are so long term that before they become something really big, you kind of expect there to be a few cycles on a way.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also very interesting. We have a very broad sector focus, right? So we have this climate change mitigation potential threshold, but beyond that, we are sector agnostic. And it's very interesting to see how each and every sector is evolving. It's completely different. If you look into energy or food or manufacturing, like each subsector is going through its own cycle. And I think one of the most important things that we've been doing, I've been personally mapping that for the last several years before climate tech was a thing. And it's to me, it's fascinating to see how different it is if you're building alternative proteins, that if you're building recycling, that if you're building, and I think one of our toughest but most important jobs is to deeply understand that, right?
Absolutely. You said that basically beyond the kind of the underlying demand of the climate change mitigation, there's sector agnostic. I mean, how is it today? Out of those 7 companies, how do they kind of go across the sectors?
Yes. Well, of course, in VC, despite being thesis driven, you always invest in those companies that are there in the market fundraising, where you can deploy the capital, right?
Of course.
We are seeing a lot happening in the food, agriculture, and land use in Europe. That's why you have 2 companies already in the portfolio there. One is Juicy Marbles, the other one is Coa. We also see a lot of happening in space, as you can imagine. So that's why I invested in Spaceport, which is space manufacturing. So then there's a lot happening in finance. That's why we invested in Tricar, which was actually a company where Ecosia invested at the beginning. So it's pretty diverse, I can say. And the companies that we're looking into now are even from different industries. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That must make your work fun also, as I can see.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But you kind of said in the introduction that World Fund is a classical VC. It doesn't mean that you have a kind of classical 10-year life cycle for the fund, or not?
Yes, we have the classical 10 plus 1 plus 1. Also the standard return expectation. Yes.
So if you kind of go into or if the world around you goes into the recession on the year, I don't know, 2 for the fund, or where are you at the moment? It must be a bit, I don't know, tricky.
Well, that really depends on the type of companies where you've invested, right? Because let's take Spaceforge. Spaceforge is doing space manufacturing, and they are focusing on a very, very high complexity industry, in particular on a very high complexity process. So honestly, recession, it just doesn't apply to them, because if they are able to succeed in what they're doing from a technical perspective, they have decades of growth ahead of them until they hit a limit because of recession. So, but of course, if you're doing more consumer focused, consumer driven, then you might take a hit. If you're doing, so I would say it of course depends. There are also some industries that are very hardly hit by supply chains constraints.
Exactly.
And some of the companies we're talking to are doing exceptionally well, and then what you see is that they are not able to grow as much as they want to, but they are still able to grow.
Exactly.
Right? So
if it's 100% instead of the 200%, then
that's right.
In a bigger picture, it might not be such a big deal, even though it has a direct impact on the company. Absolutely.
That is exactly what you said.
How do you? I mean, I think the kind of how would I say, the maybe a more generic, not so directly linked to this current macroeconomic situation around us, but putting climate tech and the 10-year life cycle of a fund together, where the climate tech, some of them probably will proliferate or succeed in 10 plus years. What's the logic, or how can you kind of make it happen?
Of course, yes, and that really depends on each subsector. I can say for each subsector we can invest in a different TRL, right? So different level of readiness to go to the market. There are industries where in, let's say, 7 years, you're able to go from an idea to a big success. And there are other industries where you have to start from later in the life of the company. So that's why we're very careful to when we invest from late seed to Series B. But late seed on energy is completely different from late seed on chemicals. So that's one of our toughest and most important jobs, to understand in which moment for each industry and each market we can enter as a fund. Yes.
As you mentioned energy, have you seen the kind of current European Russian energy situation impacting the energy startup field?
Yes, of course. I mean, there's nothing positive to be said about Russian invasion, right? So what we see is that those companies that are focusing on the energy transition, so basically electrification and beyond, are getting lots of inbound from the market, because everyone is trying to understand how to stop depending on Russian commodities. So for those companies focusing on electrification, there are more opportunities, but you also have to be very careful, because some of these opportunities can be just short-lived. One of our partners, Craig Douglas, has been investing for 10 years in the energy transition, and he has seen all the cycles, and I think he has a very always a very cautious way of understanding this market. And the company has to follow the best possible trajectory and has to take advantage of any change in the market, but still the energy industry, it's a slow moving one from a regulation perspective, and it's absolutely key to have that in mind for every startup.
Exactly. It's probably one of the slowest moving ones because of the scale, because the projects are just so big.
Yes, and because despite Europe being one market for many things, energy-wise, is still country by country.
Very much so. But it's interesting to see companies. I mean, in Estonia, for example, we have one company which defines itself as a startup, and it builds or kind of working on a development of a nuclear project. So it could be a startup built nuclear power plant in Estonia at some point.
Yes, no. I think that it's incredible to see the ambition of some companies on a good way, right? On nuclear, on fusion or fission. I mean, we might have nuclear power plants on ships being delivered across the world by startups in 10 years. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other kind of related part is hydrogen, clearly. There is so much hydrogen, hydrogen hype going on also at the same time. We're seeing a lot of that. What else wanted to talk to you? I mean, we kind of touched up on the macro economy and how this is having impact on the decisions and going forward. And that's probably the kind of the big theme of this year going forward, right?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone is going to be tweeting about the impacts of macroeconomy on VCs and how valuations were crazy and how we're never going to do that again.
Until the next cycle, right?
That's right. I think that if you invest in companies that have fundamental potential advantages, then that's the best you can do. I mean, you always invest in technology and not market dynamics. You have to take market dynamics into account, but there has to be a technological advantage that a company is building. So that's the safest bet you can do. But then,
the rest is up to everything else. There was something. So being based in Barcelona, how much do you see the kind of local startup sector booming? That's a very good question, actually. We are a distributed fund, which is very special. We are at the moment in Berlin, Munich, Amsterdam, Cologne, Barcelona, and Madrid, and also someone in the UK. And it's super interesting how we all compete to to push for our local deal flow. But for Barcelona, climate tech is really, really, really moving a lot. Spain has some characteristics in some industries like food, for example, or agriculture, as you can imagine, that are already very dynamic. And the climate perspective is adding, I think, a very good ingredient. So there are lots of things going on in Barcelona. You will see Barcelona becoming a hub for climate tech sooner rather than later. I'm very happy about it personally. Yeah. Of course. And it's so cool to see that kind of, in a way, new regions coming to the European startup map. It's not the London, Berlin, and Stockholm, or what have you. The new towns are popping up, and new ecosystems are born, and a kind of capital is coming to the new towns, which means that there is more companies being born again, and that's such a cool development.
Yes, no, and it's also because from a climate tech perspective, there's no one solution. So every hub can bring to the table their special skills based on the local ecosystem, universities, the industry, the customer whatsoever. So it's also for us very important to understand where to go for what solution.
We're seeing in the north a lot of battery technologies and that kind of stuff
Indeed.
being developed. I assume in Barcelona it must be something to do with the heat mitigation, right?
There's a lot of agri-food tech. There's a lot of, actually, one of the most relevant players on heat mitigation for that data centers is in Barcelona, Summer. Yes, Barcelona has always been a very relevant place for travel tech, as as you can imagine.
Logical.
So yeah.
Just to wrap it up, what makes World Fund special? Why should all climate tech startups from the world contact you guys?
I think that being a fund that can deploy capital across several stages is important for climate tech. We have detected that the biggest gap is there. So many times companies that are deep tech, which is one of we're a deep tech fund, which is already not so common. And for deep tech companies, sometimes they struggle to raise the following round, and we want to be there for them. That's why 60% of the fund is reserved for follow-ons. So when we talk to a company on the seed stage, is because we want to be with them on the following steps as well. And that for climate tech, we believe is super relevant, super relevant. We are also very thesis driven, so we try to have a deep understanding of each sector, subsector, and help the founders. And we are trying to be thought leaders in the actual quantification of the potential climate change mitigation of a startup. There are other funds in the world which we are collaborating with, but we want to be part of that. We want to be a traditional VC that also shows the numbers and the impact, and that takes pride and also responsibility of what we do.
Do you see there is a challenge between the kind of the balance of that, kind of, I don't know, the changing the world mission of the climate tech, and at the same time, delivering at least the traditional VC industry returns to the investors?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that, it was of course the founding thesis of the fund that we see an opportunity that the companies that will deliver the highest climate impact will also be the ones delivering the highest financial impact. That was the founding thesis of the fund. But now we're seeing it, and it's just incredible. They just do better. They're more resilient. Their customers are more engaged. Their teams are more engaged. I mean, talent is probably one of the most complicated things that a company faces when they need to scale. And purpose, mission-driven founders are able to attract better talent, and for that talent, they remain in the company. So no, I mean, we're not seeing this as a problem, but rather as an advantage. Yes.
Good. I think that's a good point to wrap it up. Thanks, Alex, for joining us today.
No, thank you so much, Darmo.
Join us again for the next episode. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please give us a good rating and leave the feedback in your podcast player so others will find it too. We will be back next week. Turn on to Nature-backed podcast.
Stay smooth with the sweet sounds on Sat 95. We have the finest selection of smooth jazz from around the world. Download the Autolus app from the App Store or Google Play, or listen online at autolus.com/Sat95. We are the global destination for contemporary jazz. Sat 95.
Are you ready to write? Are you ready to become a published writer? Then tune in and take notes, because each week on Simply Write with Polly, we cover writing craft, the ins and outs of running a writing business, and we'll also hear from some big name authors about how they get their work done and published so that we can learn to do it too. Join us each week right here on the Creators Network of Electrocast for Simply Write with Polly.
Electricast.